Every writer has some little discipline thing, some gestures, some obsessions. Mine is simple. I like to look at a landscape. It's as if I am making my eyes rest for a while. That if I write, then I'm stuck someplace, I look at a romantic landscape, any landscape, from above, my imagination works. My office in Istanbul that I've been living looks at the entrance of Bosphorus, the entrance of Golden Horn. I can see the bridge, the first bridge over Bosphorus across the Asian side and European side, entrance Topkapı Palace, Blue Mosque, Saint Sophia, this famous silhouette of Istanbul that Le Corbusier wrote about. These wonderful views are the things that I look at it. Of course, it has also a symbolic quality. I write about Istanbul and I see the most beautiful Istanbul landscape in front of my eyes. I'm happy about that. I'm self-conscious about that, but I'm also relaxed about that. I am very natural looking at this landscape. I know the boats. I feel as if I'm in a crowded avenue, and I look at the way I look at the boats. It is very typical of a big city that you look at the cars and buses and the trains in a town. But I care about Bosphorus traffic, its beauty. It makes my mind relax, and also it feeds my imagination. This is where I belong. This landscape made me. I'm looking at this for the last 40, 50 years. In my childhood, we used to take a car and come to a place in Istanbul to look at this landscape. We used to go to Bosphorus on Sundays just to be close to Bosphorus. It gave you a different quality of happiness. I wrote all about this in my book, Autobiographical Memories in Istanbul. I understood that I am writing about Istanbul after the age of 40. Not that I was writing about some other town, but when I published my books internationally, international critics could begin to call me Istanbul writer. For me, it was normal because this is where I was living, and I have lived all my life, 72 years, in Istanbul. So what does writers write about? You write about your friends, your family, your acquaintances, anyone you met, your schoolmates, anyone you know. And I met humanity in Istanbul, and everyone I know lived in Istanbul because I also lived in Istanbul. But I was not thinking about I am an Istanbul writer. I even embraced this title of being Istanbul writer, and I made self-imposed mission of writing about Istanbul, places that I don't know. A strangeness in my mind. My novel about the new neighborhoods, peripheral Istanbul, immigration to Istanbul, poor people coming from Anatolia to Istanbul, and to work. This is a book about Istanbul, but not autobiographical Istanbul, and Istanbul that I researched and went into distant neighborhoods with a bodyguard behind me for political reasons. Worked, did interviews with people, took photos, and I studied these areas. And I also researched the history of these places. Nice thing about walking in Istanbul is suddenly, wow, you see at the end of a street, you see Bosphorus, or a detail of a ship, a detail from a ship, a boat, something that is beyond the cityscape, something that is related to Bosphorus, history, geography, which I like, which is part of Istanbul. Part of the most important thing is that ding, a hill and a glimpse of the sea. If you're writing about Istanbul, it's not important whether you're writing about Istanbul in New York or Istanbul. What is important is the authenticity and the strength of the experience. You may have walked in the streets of Istanbul and immediately write about it, or you have an experience of it, which feels authentic, unique. No one had said this before, but also it is being experienced by others. You are sure about that. What are these unique things that make a city unique? I counted them once. The sound, every city has a different sound. For example, the boat the ones you hear in Istanbul is completely different. Every city had details that produce, or the subway sound, the doors of the cars. Every city had, or the shop windows, they're different. These windows, they close at night. Every city is also different, and I care about that. Also, there are some visual qualities. Bosphorus lends a visual quality to Istanbul, which, when I think about landscape, my landscape is also part of Bosphorus, and I care about that. But these things are effective because we filter them through memory. They are important for us. We are attached to them. When I published my book Istanbul in early 2000s and referred to city as Hüzünlü, which is Turkish melancholy, a sad city. In 40s, 50s, 60s, in even early 70s, Istanbul, Turkey was really poor. And my sense of Istanbul is being poor at the edge of Europe. And we developed this feeling of Hüzün, Turkish melancholy, which was also a sort of a Sufi ethics. That is, you don't venture, you don't want to make money, you're not going to be a conqueror or a hero, you just want to be a modest person. This was the feeling of melancholy, Turkish Hüzün, that gave me a philosophy of resignation, nobility of failure, that these are things that I associated myself with in my early childhood. These I also connect with black and white winter landscapes of Istanbul. My Istanbul is beautiful. My beautiful Istanbul is black and white. It's winter. It's Bosphorus. The city is not colorful, but it gives you a sort of a history whose texture is falling apart. Not only the Ottoman old buildings in my childhood, they were not even painted. They were old grayish wooden buildings. Ottoman modernity. Even the buildings of Ottoman factories were falling apart in my childhood. But I loved this fading away, black and white, Ottoman or modern Turkish early republic surfaces that were deteriorating. I wrote about them with tenderly because I also found the imagery that I wanted to like. I used to go out in the streets of Istanbul, take photos, black and white photos when I was 14, 15 in a very primitive camera. Then I take them, enlarge them, and do paintings like Pissarro, Utrillo, but sad, melancholic paintings of Istanbul. That is my Istanbul. When I wrote about all of this, saying poverty, sadness, melancholy, Turkish Hüzün, my childhood, this is the imagery I had. This is my Istanbul. My new generation of readers in early 2000 said, no, this is not our Istanbul. Our Istanbul is happy, ice cream, summer, sun, tourists. Yes and no. I also enjoy it. I also look at it from my window, but that does not inspire me too much.
Okay, now another thing that I have learned about Istanbul from international visitors are overabundance of cats everywhere. Since this was normal for me, I never noticed it. But international tourists made us, I had so many offers, would you write a book about Istanbul and cats? No. But there are many cats in my books, it's normal. Then they're also very happy around here. It's very unique and Istanbul kind of thing that cats are treated very nice here. They're happy. And they don't have an inside. They cannot enter the apartments or they don't have owners. They have apartments and windows and they visit from window to window.
As I walk in Istanbul, pensive, thinking of other things, rushing to an appointment, traffic, my mind is busy, I may be angry, happy, what are these? Suddenly I have a glimpse of a hill, a hilly street going down to the sea. First, this is for me the most Istanbulesque, if you can use that term, thing, that you're walking in a street parallel to the sea, Bosphorus, Sea of Marmara, Golden Horn. Then suddenly, bing, you see a street going towards the sea, and and two lines of pavements and buildings going towards sea. I like it. Then also it has this quality change. Wooden buildings in 50s, 60s, and minarets and domes that were also worn out, look grayish and not clean. Now there's more beton, wooden houses disappear, and old buildings are preserved and cleaned so much like a piece of new cake. Sometimes it's too artificial. The minaret in front of my mosque is just stone by stone pulled down and built again. Everything looks old, but actually all the old buildings, old mosques are renovated continuously. But all this perspective, looking at the sea beyond, hills, produces a texture. Although the wooden houses of my childhood disappeared, the oldness, the fragile, the weak structures, poverty, plus lack of perspective, or whatever you call it, gives me a sense of Istanbul, even in the most fancy imitation modern neighborhoods. But of course also please don't forget that I have lived in the central Istanbul all my life. That is, the Istanbul of entrance of Bosphorus, the old town, the Golden Horn. I walk all of my life in those places, and my mind, my body knows these neighborhoods, and they associate them. Old Town, even in my childhood and even today, is associated with Ottoman bureaucracy, old Turkish things, old Ottoman culture. While European part, Cihangir, Nişantaşı, where I lived in my childhood, is more, it represents the aspire of the desire of the Turks to be European, westernization, to be more European friendly culturally, especially. My life is spent between these places. Urban architecture, streets are not only the source of urbanscapes, urban landscapes that I care about, but also details of a city. In the end, if you live in that city, as I did, live 72 years in Istanbul, then a fountain, a square, an old bus, a hill, which stays the same, turns out to be an index for your memories. Once you see, if you had a fight with your girlfriend, or your mother was scolded you in front of that fountain, then 20 years later, when you come to that fountain generates memories in your imagination. Thus, I argue, after living there, and if you live there constantly, a city turns out to be an index for your memories. It's a deeper, it turns out to be a complex place. And we resist the destruction of certain buildings, because then the index, the sign that sends us to our memories also disappearing, which also destroys our memories. We are attached to this old Ottoman fountain, not only because it's a historical beautiful thing, but it's also something that is deeply related to our memories, and we want to keep these memories. We want to keep the language, we want to keep the old magazines, we want to keep the old cups. Why? Because these memories are in the end, in the long run, are part of our identity. We are struggling to preserve our integrity, our memories. Please keep that fountain there, because it's part of me after a while, because it's related. My mother scolded me and I cried next to that building, or my father asked me, would you wash the car with that fountain, or whatever. So the beauty of the complexity and the beauty of living in a big city for many years, that many significant structures, from old buildings to old trees, turn out to be signs and symbols that refer to our memories. And then thus the surfaces of a city had many layers. Some of them are also made by our memories. these places where people go, sit at, drink tea and drink water pipes. But the cities and these places are changing so fast. You know, there's some, oh, there's a, wow, I want to come here. Next year it's not there, it's bankrupt. I like the combination of Ottoman buildings combined with Ottoman modernity. They are in decline, they are not polished, they are not shining. Old people, very conservative old people with deep religious beliefs are there. I'm not upset, in fact, I'm happy being close to them. But by mentally, I'm totally different, but I like it. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in a way, invented walking and his romantic imagination working. Another generation after him, Baudelaire and others, saw walking in the street, flaneur, sees, invents something. If Jean-Jacques Rousseau invented walking in the fields in romantic nature, Baudelaire invented walking in the city, the flaneur. And in fact, I like what the flaneur sees in Istanbul. Shop windows, crowds, old-fashioned old people, street sellers, pigeons, children playing football, old cars, shop owners who are sitting in front of their shops. Sometimes the poverty, the slowness, sometimes the roughness, brutality of the city. I know all. I like it. I capture it. I belong to it. It inspires me. I sometimes forget about it. Sometimes I walk. For quite a long time, I walk in this town with a bodyguard behind me. Then there are also surprises. I run away from my bodyguard, go to strange neighborhoods. Sometimes bodyguards are also useful. In normal life, I would enter courtyards that I would not enter in normal life because it may be private or there may be some aggressive people there. So it's complex walking, and I had so many different types of walking. And I also published 2 photo books that are based on my walks in the city. So I did a lot of photographing and walking in the city, which inspired me, which fed me, and I need it. And the more you walk, the more you feel proud that you also belong to this city and its imagery. Istanbul developed, and perhaps all the non-European cities also developed like that, looking more European and European. Modernity is in imitating Europe. You want it, but once you get it, you're also troubled by that. It's not authentic, it's imitation, but also you want some part of it. So the mentality, the desires of non-Europeans, and we Turks are semi-Europeans perhaps, to be more European, more modern, has fatalistic consequences, but also very creative consequences. You go back and pick up something very old and make it modern in a way that's never made in Europe. That is the source of my old work, all of my writings. Or you go to Europe, you get something, but you are crushed by the mimic experience. It's not fruitful. It's very problematical. So there you develop a sort of a love and hate relationship, which I also observe in Fyodor Dostoevsky and Tanizaki, the Japanese writer. In their youth, they both admired Europe so much, perhaps like me, but when they grew up, they turn back to tradition with what they have learned from Europe. Not everyone could do it. First, you have to fall in love with Europe and then be a radical Occidentalist. Then Tanizaki and Dostoevsky, and I have learned so much from them. One of them, Tanizaki, wrote very pro-Western, inventive early books. Then he rewrote The Tale of Genji, Japanese classics in his language. So that was Dostoevsky was at first was too much influenced by Europe, was imitating Balzac and Dickens. Then later he went inward and was more busy with Russian mentality, conservative Russian orthodoxy, so forth and so on. I understand these people, and I have learned something to write about Ottoman past and modernity, combine them. I learned that from their heartfelt, their devotion to ideas, to attitudes. They were spiritually radical in their westernization and occidentalism, or in their defense of the tradition. But they always combined these things. They did not put walls between Europe and tradition. In 1850s, Flaubert came to Istanbul. He first went to Egypt, wrote letters to his friends, then he wrote about Istanbul saying, it will be the capital of the world in 100 years. And that did not turn out. The reverse happened. It was marginalized and provincialized by Europe. And that was my sadness. I always wanted what Flaubert said, it will be that Turkey be or Istanbul be the capital of the world. Of course, we all want that. But on the other hand, all of my life, especially in my early years when I was writing my early books, 30s, 40s, was not internationally acknowledged or famous, I was thinking my sentimental politics was deeply feeling provincial, not European enough, angry, sad and confused about that, recognizing this feeling of provinciality which is developed and addressed in Snow, in early novels, then putting this feeling of provinciality, which is a negative feeling, which is something you don't have, you're lacking something, you're not at the center, you're at the periphery, but turning it around, as I did in Snow, to in such a place that honor it, make it, put it on a pedestal. Oh, my provinciality is good. What about that? You don't have that. And this I learned to make an early success in recognition in Europe and West also helped that what I see as my failure, that is my provinciality, may be my strong point. Why don't I underline that? That's why I went to the most provincial place in Turkey, Kars, and wrote my Snow there. I look at the map, I want to go there and set a story here. I already knew about the place through the newspapers, and with a determined idea of setting a provincial story in a provincial country. And that's Snow, and I also put political Islam and contradictions with secularism and modernity. Here is a book. The greatness of the art of the novel, and Henry James referred to it as art of the novel, referring to it as art, it is elasticity to capture every single detail of life. Traditional poetry or traditional forms of literature were not good in capturing the little tiny details of life. This cup, this secondary quality, this imitation carpet, this plastic, everything is cheap and secondary and mass produced, and they don't have the glory and aura of greatness, while literature can pick these petty, secondary, imitation, insignificant objects, and poetry cannot, or modern poetry can, and pick them up, raise it to a good art and honor them and put them in a higher place. Thus, the art of the novel is good in capturing the everyday silly things or ordinary objects, but make them dramatical, meaningful, and put them in a whole. I like cities. Cities are source of immense brands and objects that in a village you see a limited number of objects. In a city you see advertisements, objects, imported objects, strange corners, architecture, so many things. Novels can embrace them, put them in a whole. That is, while I have this city, enough for me. It's so much is happening. I have a huge library of all Istanbul books or all Istanbul things. I look at them, it feeds them. Complexity and richness of a city is a gift given by God or what, that I continue. Sometimes I think I'm writing long novels, perhaps because of that. I want to touch everything, and everything sometimes seems so interesting in Istanbul. Perhaps I am misguiding myself, motivating myself, whatever. So city life, daily life is put on a pedestal through the art of the novel. When we read a novel, petty, silly things that old traditional poetry or drama would not address now had found a form that will also question the meaning of the whole.